My name is Rachel Carlos. I am 65 years old, and last night at my daughter's engagement party, she screamed at me in front of everyone, "Get out, Mom. My fiancé doesn't want you here." She smirked, laughed, mocked me like I was nothing. Like I was some kind of embarrassment she couldn't wait to be rid of. I walked away without saying a single word. Not because I didn't have words. God knows I had words. But because in that moment, with everyone staring, with the silence pressing down like a weight on my chest, I knew that anything I said would be twisted, used against me, turned into proof that I was the problem. Before I tell you what happened next, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below where you're watching from. I need to know I'm not alone in this. I need to know that somewhere out there, someone understands what it feels like to give everything to your child and have them look at you like you're garbage. The next morning, she texted me. No apology. No remorse. Just casual words that told me everything I needed to know about who my daughter had become. "Mom, I need the keys to the townhouse." I took a deep breath, my hands shaking as I stared at that message, and I told her words that shattered her entire world. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back. Let me tell you who I am, who I was, and how we got here. My name is Rachel Carlos, and I've spent the last 40 years of my life doing everything I could to be enough. Enough for my husband before he left. Enough for my daughter after he was gone. Enough for a world that seemed determined to tell me I wasn't. I raised my daughter, Emily, completely alone from the time she was 5 years old. Her father walked out on us without a backward glance, without a forwarding address, without a single child support payment. Just gone. Like we were something he could erase from his life story. So I became everything. Mother and father. Provider and comforter. Disciplinarian and best friend. I worked 2 jobs for years, secretary during the day, cleaning offices at night, so Emily could have dance lessons, so she could go on school trips, so she could wear clothes that didn't scream we're poor. I sacrificed my sleep, my health, my social life, and any chance of finding love again. Everything went to her. Every penny. Every ounce of energy. Every dream I had for myself got folded up and tucked away in a drawer I told myself I'd open someday. The townhouse. Let me tell you about the townhouse because it's important, because it's at the center of everything that's happened. It wasn't just property. It was my mother's legacy, the only thing she had to leave me when she passed away 12 years ago. My mother, who cleaned houses her entire life, who saved every dollar she could, bought that modest 2-bedroom townhouse in a decent neighborhood as her retirement dream. She lived there for 8 years before the cancer took her, and she left it to me with tears in her eyes, saying, "Rachel, this is your security. Promise me you'll never let anyone take this from you." I kept that promise. Through everything, through the years when Emily needed braces and college funds and a car, I kept that townhouse. I rented it out when I had to, lived in it when I could. It represented stability in a life that had been anything but stable. It represented my mother's love, her sacrifice, her determination to leave something behind. And yes, I always assumed that one day it would go to Emily. Of course I did. She was my only child. But I never said it was hers. I never promised it. Because my mother's voice was always there, whispering, "Don't let anyone take this from you." Emily and I used to be close. God, we used to be so close it hurts to think about it now. When she was little, we'd have these Saturday morning rituals, pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse, her sitting on the bathroom counter chattering away while I put on my makeup, both of us watching old movies together on the couch, her head on my shoulder. She'd tell me I was her best friend. She'd make me cards that said "World's Best Mom" in crayon and glitter. On Mother's Day, she'd pick dandelions from the yard and present them to me like they were roses, and they were more beautiful to me than any roses could have been. I remember her high school graduation. She was valedictorian, my brilliant, ambitious girl, and when she gave her speech, she looked right at me and said, "I want to thank my mother, who showed me that strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting up every single time." I cried. God, I cried so hard I could barely see her face. That was my daughter. That was the girl I raised. College changed things, but I told myself that was normal. She went to a prestigious university on a scholarship, my pride and joy, and she came home less often, called less frequently. But that's what kids do, right? They grow up. They build their own lives. I told myself I should be happy she was independent, confident, making her own way in the world. She got a job at a marketing firm in the city, started earning good money, started dressing differently, talking differently. She'd correct my grammar sometimes, gently at first. She'd suggest I update my wardrobe. She'd look embarrassed when I showed up to take her to lunch wearing my comfortable shoes and my practical coat. But I told myself this was normal too. She was becoming sophisticated, worldly. Of course she'd be a little embarrassed by her simple mother who still shopped at discount stores and said things like "I seen" instead of "I saw." I tried to change for her. I really did. I bought new clothes I couldn't afford. I watched YouTube videos on proper grammar. I learned to hold my tongue about things that bothered me. I wanted her to be proud of me. Then, 2 years ago, she met Brandon. Brandon Ashworth. Even his name sounds like money, doesn't it? And he has money. Lots of it. Tech money, the kind that seems to multiply while you sleep. He drives a car that costs more than I made in 5 years. He wears watches that could pay off someone's mortgage. And he's handsome, I'll give him that, all sharp suits and perfect hair and teeth so white they practically glow. Emily was smitten immediately. She'd call me and gush about their dates, restaurants where a single appetizer cost what I spend on groceries for a week, weekend trips to wine country, gallery openings, and theater premieres. She was living a life I could never have given her, and part of me was happy about that. Isn't that what every mother wants? For her child to have more than she did? But Brandon never liked me. I could see it the first time we met. Emily brought him to my apartment for dinner. I'd moved into a small one-bedroom after Emily graduated, something affordable, something that let me finally stop working 2 jobs, and I'd cooked for 3 days. I made all of Emily's childhood favorites: pot roast, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, apple pie from scratch. I set the table with my good dishes, the ones my mother had given me. I wore my nicest outfit. I wanted so badly for him to like me, to see that even though I didn't have money, I had love, I had warmth, I had value. He barely touched the food. He sat there in my small apartment with his expensive cologne filling the air, checking his phone every few minutes, making polite but distant conversation. He called the pot roast comfort food in a tone that made it sound like an insult. He asked about the townhouse, specifically about the townhouse, wanted to know all about its value, its location, its potential. At the time, I thought he was just making conversation. Now I know better. After that dinner, things shifted. Emily started canceling our standing Sunday brunches. She'd say she was busy, she had plans with Brandon's family, she had work things. When we did meet up, she'd comment on my appearance more, but not kindly. "Mom, you really should do something about your hair." Just a thought. "Mom, those jeans are really dated. Do you want me to take you shopping?" "Mom, maybe don't mention your cleaning job days when you meet Brandon's parents. It's just, you know." No. I didn't know. Or I didn't want to know. I didn't want to see that my daughter was becoming ashamed of me, of where she came from, of the woman who'd sacrificed everything so she could become someone who'd be embarrassed to claim her mother. 6 months ago, Emily called with big news: Brandon had proposed. She was getting married. I should have been overjoyed, and part of me was. But there was something in her voice, something brittle and performative, like she was reading lines. When I asked about the proposal, about her feelings, about whether she was happy, she gave me Instagram caption answers. It was so romantic, Mom. I'm living a dream, Mom. Everything is perfect, Mom. But I'm her mother. I know when something's wrong. I know the difference between real joy and the performance of joy. When I pressed, just a little, she got defensive. Why can't you just be happy for me? Why do you always have to question everything? This is why Brandon says you're negative. Brandon says I'm negative. That was the first time she'd told me something Brandon said about me, but it wouldn't be the last. The wedding planning began, and I was systematically excluded from everything that mattered. Emily and Brandon's mother, Patricia, a woman who wears pearls to breakfast and says summer as a verb, picked the venue. They chose the flowers. They created the guest list. When I asked if I could help, Emily would say, "Oh Mom, you don't need to worry about any of this. Brandon's family is handling it. Just relax." But I wanted to contribute. This was my only daughter's wedding. So I saved money. I cut back on everything, groceries, utilities, the small luxuries I'd finally allowed myself, and I managed to save $3,000. It wasn't much compared to what Brandon's family was spending, but it was mine to give. I told Emily I wanted to pay for the rehearsal dinner, or contribute to the flowers, or something. Anything. She looked uncomfortable. Mom, that's really sweet, but Brandon's dad already arranged the rehearsal dinner. And honestly, $3,000 won't really make a dent in the floral budget. Maybe you could just, I don't know, keep it for yourself? Keep it for myself. Like I was trying to insert myself where I wasn't wanted. Like my contribution was so negligible it was almost embarrassing. Then came the conversations about the townhouse. It started small, Emily mentioning that she and Brandon were looking at places, that everything in the city was so expensive, that it would be nice to have somewhere to live while they saved for their dream home. Then Brandon joined the conversation, all charm and smiles. "Rachel, that townhouse of yours has such great bones. With some renovations, it could be worth quite a bit more. Have you ever thought about updating it?" I said I liked it the way it was, that it reminded me of my mother, that I wasn't interested in turning it into some modern showcase. His smile got tighter. Of course, of course. It's just that Emily and I were talking, and since she's your only heir, it's really going to be hers eventually anyway. We thought maybe it would make sense for us to move in now, fix it up, make it our own. You could stay in your apartment. Everyone wins. Everyone wins. Except the townhouse wasn't his to plan for. It wasn't even Emily's yet. It was mine. My mother's legacy. My security. And they were already treating it like community property they just had to wait to claim. I said no. Politely but firmly, I said no. The townhouse wasn't available. They were welcome to visit, but I wasn't ready to hand it over, wasn't ready to let go of my mother's memory, wasn't ready to give up the only financial security I had. Brandon's face went cold. Emily looked at me like I'd slapped her. Mom, why are you being like this? We're not asking you to give it to us. We just want to use it. You're being really selfish right now. Selfish. I was being selfish. Me, who'd given up everything, who'd worked myself to exhaustion, who'd sacrificed every dream and desire for her benefit. I was selfish for wanting to keep the one thing my mother left me. That conversation was 3 months ago. Things got worse after that. Emily stopped calling. When I called her, she'd be short, distracted, annoyed. She stopped inviting me to wedding-related events. When I found out through Facebook that they'd had a cake tasting and I hadn't been invited, I asked her about it. "Oh, Mom, it was last minute. Just family." Just family. I wasn't family anymore. 2 weeks ago, I found out about the engagement party through a text message. Not even a call. A text. Hey Mom, we're having an engagement party next Saturday at Brandon's parents' place. It's cocktail attire. 7 p.m. No warmth. No excitement. Just the bare facts, delivered like I was someone on a mailing list. But I was so starved for inclusion, so desperate to be part of my daughter's life, that I said yes immediately. Of course I'd be there. I'd love to celebrate with them. I spent money I didn't have on a dress, cocktail attire, she'd said, so I found something at a department store, navy blue and modest but nice. I got my hair done professionally for the first time in years. I even bought new shoes, though they pinched my feet terribly. I wanted to look good. I wanted Emily to look at me and feel proud, not embarrassed. I wanted to fit into this new world she was building, even though every instinct told me I didn't belong there. I drove to Brandon's parents' house, mansion, really, the kind of place with a circular driveway and columns and professionally landscaped gardens, with a gift I'd agonized over for days. A beautiful picture frame with a photo of Emily as a little girl, laughing in my arms, both of us covered in flour from baking cookies. I'd written on the back, "May your marriage be filled with as much joy as you brought to my life." Simple. Heartfelt. True. The party was already in full swing when I arrived. The house was full of people I didn't know, Brandon's friends, his family, his colleagues. Everyone looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine, all perfect clothes and perfect hair and perfect smiles. I felt like a fraud immediately, like everyone could see I didn't belong. I found Emily in the living room, surrounded by a group of young women who were admiring her ring. She looked beautiful, my beautiful girl, in a white cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. When she saw me, something flickered across her face. Not happiness. Not welcome. Something closer to irritation, or maybe resignation. "Mom. You made it." Her voice was flat. "Of course, sweetheart. I wouldn't miss this for the world." I held out the gift, smiling. "I brought you something." She took it without looking at it, and handed it to one of her friends. "Thanks. You can put that on the gift table." Then she turned back to her friends, dismissing me. I stood there for a moment, unsure what to do. Then I saw Brandon across the room, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. He whispered something to his mother, Patricia, who glanced my way and frowned slightly before returning to her conversation. I tried to mingle. I really did. I introduced myself to people, made polite conversation, complimented the house and the decorations. But every conversation felt forced, every smile felt strained. People would ask how I knew the couple, and when I said I was Emily's mother, they'd look surprised. Oh. I didn't realize Emily's mother would be here. Like my presence was unexpected. Like I wasn't supposed to exist. I heard whispers. I saw glances. Brandon's mother kept looking at me like I was something unpleasant she'd stepped in. And Emily, my Emily, was avoiding me. Every time I tried to catch her eye, she'd look away. Every time I moved toward her, she'd shift to another group. I should have left then. God, I should have seen what was coming and walked out with my dignity intact. But I didn't. I stayed, hoping that things would get better, that Emily would warm up, that this was just nerves about the party and not a reflection of how she really felt about me. Then came the toasts. Brandon's father stood up and gave a speech about family and legacy and the importance of marrying the right kind of person. His eyes never once landed on me. Brandon's mother talked about how thrilled she was to welcome Emily into their family, how Emily was exactly the kind of daughter-in-law she'd always hoped for, sophisticated, successful, cultured. The implication was clear: Emily had arrived. She'd transcended whatever humble beginnings she came from. She was one of them now. Then Brandon stood up. He talked about Emily like she was a prize he'd won, a beautiful object he'd acquired. He talked about their future, the house they'd buy, the vacations they'd take, the life they'd build. He talked about family, about surrounding themselves with people who understood their vision, their values, their goals. And then he said, to family, both the one we're born into and the one we choose. Everyone raised their glasses. Everyone cheered. And Emily looked at Brandon like he'd just said the most profound thing she'd ever heard. That's when I knew. That's when I understood with perfect, painful clarity that I was not the family they were choosing. I was the family Emily was born into, the family she was leaving behind, the embarrassing origin story she wanted to forget. I couldn't breathe. The room felt too small, too hot, too full of people who were celebrating my daughter's escape from me. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to get out of there. I made my way toward the patio doors, but I had to pass Emily and Brandon. I stopped, just for a moment, touched Emily's arm. Sweetheart, I'm going to step outside for a bit of air. It's a little warm here. She turned to me, and her face, God, her face was so cold. Actually, Mom, I need to talk to you. Something in her tone made my blood run cold. Around us, people were still laughing, still drinking, still celebrating. But a few had noticed Emily's tone, and had turned to watch. What is it, honey? I kept my voice gentle, hoping to defuse whatever this was. She glanced at Brandon. He nodded at her, just slightly. Encouraging her. Giving her permission. And I realized this was planned. This was something they'd decided together. This wasn't a spontaneous moment of frustration. This was an execution. Mom, I think it's time you left. My heart stopped. What? Emily, I don't understand. I just got here. You don't fit in here, Mom. Can't you see that? Her voice was rising now, and more people were turning to watch. Look around. Look at everyone here. These are successful people. Educated people. People who understand Brandon and me, who understand the life we're building. Emily, please. Let's talk about this privately. I reached for her hand, but she pulled away like I'd burned her. No, Mom. I'm done pretending. I'm done acting like everything's fine when you're constantly making things difficult. Brandon and I asked you for one simple thing, to let us use the townhouse, and you couldn't even do that. You're so selfish. So controlling. You want to keep me tied to this sad little life you lived, but that's not who I am anymore. The room had gone silent. Everyone was watching now. Everyone was witnessing my humiliation. Emily, that's not fair. I've given you everything. Given me everything? She laughed. Actually laughed. It was a cruel sound, harsh and mocking. You gave me a childhood in a crappy apartment, wearing second-hand clothes, eating cheap food. You gave me embarrassment every time you showed up at school in your cleaning uniform. You gave me a mother who couldn't speak properly, who didn't know how to dress, who had no culture, no sophistication, no class. Each word was a knife. Each word was designed to cut, to hurt, to destroy. And they did. God, they did. I worked 2 jobs so you could have dance lessons, I whispered. I sacrificed everything so you could go to that private school, so you could have opportunities one never had. And you never let me forget it, did you? She was yelling now, her face twisted with anger I didn't know she was capable of. Every time I accomplished something, there you were, reminding me how much you'd sacrificed. Making me feel guilty for wanting more than the poverty you were comfortable with. Emily, I never. Get out, Mom. She screamed it. Screamed it like I was nothing, like I was dirt, like I was an embarrassment she couldn't wait to be rid of. My fiancé doesn't want you here. She turned to Brandon, who was watching with a satisfied smirk on his face. She slipped her hand into his, drawing strength from his approval. Then she looked back at me, and the expression on her face, I'll never forget it. Contempt. Pure contempt. And something worse, satisfaction. She was enjoying this. She was enjoying my humiliation, my pain, my public destruction. People were staring. Some looked uncomfortable, embarrassed. Others looked curious, entertained even, like this was dinner theater they hadn't expected. Patricia, Brandon's mother, looked pleased, like Emily had finally proved herself worthy by cutting out the deadweight of her past. I wanted to scream back. I wanted to tell her exactly what I thought of her cruelty, her ingratitude, her betrayal. I wanted to defend myself, to make everyone in that room understand what I'd done for her, what I'd given up, how much I'd loved her. But I didn't. I looked at my daughter, this stranger wearing my daughter's face, and I realized that anything I said would just be fuel for her fire. She wanted me to make a scene. She wanted me to prove I was the embarrassing, unsophisticated mother she'd just described. She wanted to be able to point at me later and say, "See? This is why I had to cut her out." So I didn't give her that satisfaction. I stood there for one long moment, looking at her, memorizing her face. Mourning the girl I'd raised, the girl who'd called me her best friend, the girl who'd picked dandelions and made me cards and told an auditorium full of people that I'd taught her the meaning of strength. That girl was gone. Or maybe she'd never really existed. Maybe I'd just been convenient when she needed me, a stepping stone to something better, someone to use and discard once she'd climbed high enough. I picked up my purse. I held my head high. And I walked out of that house without saying a single word, without looking back, without giving any of them the satisfaction of seeing me break. I made it to my car before the tears came. I sat in the driver's seat in that ridiculous circular driveway, shaking so hard I couldn't get the key in the ignition. I cried like I hadn't cried since the day my mother died. I cried for the daughter I'd lost, for the years I'd wasted believing that love and sacrifice would be enough, for the fool I'd been to think that my child would always choose me. I drove home in a blur, barely aware of the road. When I got to my apartment, I sat in the dark for hours, replaying every moment, every word, every look. Trying to understand how we'd gotten here. Trying to figure out where I'd gone wrong. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling like someone had reached into my chest and ripped out my heart. Emily was my whole world. Everything I'd done for 40 years had been for her. And she'd looked at me like I was garbage, like I was nothing, like I was an obstacle to be removed from her perfect new life. The next morning, I woke up exhausted, hollow, numb. I made coffee with shaking hands. I sat at my kitchen table and tried to figure out what came next. How do you move on when your child destroys you? How do you heal from that kind of betrayal? That's when my phone buzzed. A text message. From Emily. For one insane moment, I hoped it was an apology. I hoped she'd realized what she'd done, hoped she'd come to her senses, hoped she was calling to beg my forgiveness. Even after everything, even after the cruelty and humiliation, I was ready to forgive her. That's what mothers do, right? We forgive. We love unconditionally. We give chance after chance after chance. I opened the message. Mom, I need the keys to the townhouse. I stared at that text for a long time. Read it over and over, trying to make sense of it. No, I'm sorry. No, I was wrong. No acknowledgement of what she'd done to me, how she'd treated me, how she'd humiliated me in front of dozens of people. Just a demand. A casual expectation that I would give her what she wanted, because that's what I'd always done. That's what I'd trained her to expect. And suddenly, through the pain and exhaustion and heartbreak, I felt something else. Something cold and hard and clarifying. Anger. Pure, righteous anger. I'd spent 40 years putting Emily first. 40 years sacrificing my own needs, my own dreams, my own happiness for her benefit. I'd accepted her pulling away, accepted her embarrassment, accepted her disrespect, because I told myself that's what love looked like. I told myself that being a good mother meant letting her go, letting her grow, letting her find her own path even if that path led away from me. But this wasn't growth. This wasn't independence. This was cruelty. This was manipulation. This was a spoiled woman who'd been enabled to believe that the world, that I, owed her whatever she wanted, whenever she wanted it. And I was done. God help me, I was done. I didn't respond to the text immediately. Instead, I did something I should have done months ago. I started looking through Emily's social media, really looking. And I found things I'd been too blind to see before. Posts about how excited she and Brandon were to transform their future home. Pictures of renovation inspiration boards. Comments from her friends congratulating them on finally getting the townhouse. She'd been telling people it was a done deal. She'd been promising Brandon, promising everyone, that the townhouse was theirs. I found messages too. She'd left her laptop at my apartment months ago, and asked me to hold it for her. I'd never looked at it before, I'd never violated her privacy like that, but something told me I needed to see what was there. I found email exchanges between Emily and Brandon. Him asking about the townhouse's value, about my financial situation, about whether she thought I had a will. She assured him that I was financially unsophisticated, that I'd never think to protect my assets properly, that once they were married, she'd have more leverage to pressure me into signing the property over. There were messages between Emily and a real estate agent, discussing the townhouse's renovation potential, market value, rental income possibilities. She'd given them access to look at it when I wasn't there, using the spare key I'd given her for emergencies. She'd already had it appraised. She'd already planned what to do with it. She'd treated it like it was hers to sell, and I was just an inconvenient obstacle. I found a message exchange between Emily and one of her friends from the night before. The friend texted, "Oh my God, that was intense. Are you okay?" Emily had responded, "I'm fine. Honestly, it needed to happen. She's been making everything about her for months, guilting me about the townhouse, trying to control my life. Brandon says I need to establish boundaries. I'm just glad it's done. Just glad it's done." She was glad. Glad she'd humiliated me. Glad she'd cut me out. Glad she'd hurt me in the cruelest way possible. And she saw herself as the victim in this story, saw me as controlling, as manipulative, as the villain. I sat there reading those messages, and something inside me crystallized. This wasn't about one bad night. This wasn't about wedding stress or miscommunication or hurt feelings. This was about who my daughter had become, or maybe who she'd always been, and I'd been too blinded by love to see it. She didn't love me. Maybe she never had. Maybe I'd just been useful to her, a source of support and resources and sacrifice, and now that she'd found someone who could give her more, I was disposable. The townhouse was never about needing a place to live. They could afford their own place. Brandon came from money. This was about control. About taking the one thing I had that was mine, that represented my independence, my security, my mother's love. This was about completely erasing any power I had in the relationship, making me totally dependent on Emily's good graces, on her willingness to include me in her life. This was about breaking me. And I'd almost let it happen. I made coffee, real coffee, strong and bitter. I sat down at my kitchen table with a notepad and pen. And I planned what I was going to say. I texted Emily back, "We need to meet. Today. I'll come to your apartment at 2 p.m. She responded immediately, just bring the keys. You don't need to come over. 2 p.m. I'll be there. We're going to have a conversation. She didn't respond after that. Good. Let her wonder. Let her feel even a fraction of the anxiety she'd caused me. I spent the morning getting ready. I dressed carefully, professionally. I printed out documents, the deed to the townhouse in my name, my mother's will leaving it to me, records showing the property taxes I'd paid, the maintenance I'd done, the investment I'd made in keeping it. I printed out screenshots of Emily's emails, her texts, her social media posts planning to take my property. At 1:30, I got in my car and drove to Emily's apartment, the expensive apartment in the trendy neighborhood that she and Brandon had moved into 6 months ago. I parked, took a deep breath, and rode the elevator up to the 8th floor. I knocked on her door at exactly 2 p.m. She opened it, looking annoyed. Mom, I said you didn't need to come over. We're talking, Emily. Now. She stepped aside, rolling her eyes. Brandon was there too, sitting on their expensive couch in their expensive apartment filled with expensive things. Of course he was. This concerned him, after all. This was about his plans for my property. Mrs. Carlos, he said, not standing, not smiling. I hope you're here to be reasonable. I ignored him. I looked at Emily. Sit down. Mom, don't be dramatic. Just give us the keys and sit down. My voice was steel. I barely recognized it. Something in my tone made her actually listen. She sat on the couch next to Brandon, who reached over and took her hand. United front. How sweet. I remained standing. I wanted the high ground. I wanted them to have to look up at me. Last night, I began, my voice steady despite the rage coursing through me. You humiliated me in front of dozens of people. You screamed at me, called me selfish, said I didn't fit into your life. You mocked everything I'd sacrificed for you, everything I'd given up to make sure you had opportunities one never had. And then, less than 12 hours later, you texted me demanding the keys to my townhouse. Emily opened her mouth, but I held up my hand. I'm not finished. I've spent all morning reading your emails, Emily. Your plans for my property. Your discussions with real estate agents. Your conversations with Brandon about how financially unsophisticated I am, how easy it will be to manipulate me into signing over the deed. I've seen everything. Her face went white. You went through my laptop? You had no right. I had every right. It's my property you were planning to steal. My mother's legacy you were treating like your personal ATM. I pulled out the printed emails, dropped them on the coffee table between us. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Did you really think I was that stupid, that weak, that blind? Brandon's face had gone cold. Those were private communications. About my property. About manipulating me. About treating me like an obstacle to be managed. I turned back to Emily. I want you to understand something, Emily. That townhouse was never going to be yours. Not like this. Not when you've shown me that you see me as nothing but a resource to be exploited. Mom, you're being crazy. We just wanted to use it, to fix it up. We weren't going to steal it. Use it. Fix it up. Take it over. Make it yours. Call it whatever you want, but we both know the truth. Once I gave you those keys, once you moved in, I'd never get it back. You'd renovate it with Brandon's money, make it unrecognizable, and then tell me I couldn't possibly expect you to leave after all the money you'd invested. And eventually, you'd pressure me into signing it over completely, and if I didn't, you'd cut me out of your life entirely. Isn't that the plan? The silence told me everything. I'd hit the nail exactly on the head. I want you to know something else, I continued. I went to see a lawyer this morning. Before I came here. And I've done something I should have done years ago. I've created trust. The townhouse now belongs to that trust, with very specific instructions about what happens to it. When I die, it gets sold. The proceeds go to charity, specifically, to organizations that help single mothers get back on their feet, go back to school, and build independent lives. Emily's face went from white to red. You what? You're giving away my inheritance? Your inheritance? I laughed, and it was a bitter sound. You have no inheritance, Emily. You lost that right when you decided I was nothing but an embarrassment to be discarded. You lost it when you humiliated me in public. You lost it when you tried to manipulate and steal from me. You can't do this. She was on her feet now, shaking with rage. That's my future. That's my security. No. It was my mother's love. It was my security. It was never yours. You have Brandon and his family's money. You have your fancy job and your expensive apartment and your perfect life. You don't need anything from me. This is because we're getting married, isn't it? Brandon stood too, his face twisted with anger. You're jealous that Emily's moving on, building a life that doesn't revolve around you. This is just pathetic manipulation to keep control over her. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw him for exactly what he was. Not the successful, sophisticated man he pretended to be. Just a greedy, entitled boy who'd convinced my daughter that her past was something to be ashamed of, that her mother was an embarrassment, that love was conditional on wealth and status. Brandon, I said calmly, you are not part of this conversation. You are not part of this family. You will never be part of this family, because after today, I won't have one. What does that mean? Emily's voice was shrill now, panicked. It means I'm done. I'm done sacrificing for someone who sees my sacrifices as burdens. I'm done loving someone who treats my love like it's worthless. I'm done being a mother to a daughter who's ashamed of me. Mom, you're overreacting. If you just listen. No, Emily. You listen. I raised you alone. I worked myself to exhaustion so you could have dance lessons and school trips and college. I went without so you could have. I loved you unconditionally, supported you completely, believed in you absolutely. And you repaid me by treating me like garbage. Tears were streaming down her face now, but I couldn't tell if they were tears of remorse or just anger at not getting what she wanted. You stood in front of all those people last night and destroyed me. You mocked my clothes, my education, my work, everything I am. You screamed at me to leave because your fiancé, this man who's poisoned you against your own mother, didn't want me there. And then you had the audacity, the absolute nerve, to demand I hand over my property like none of that mattered. I was upset. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. You meant every word. And even if you didn't, you said them. You can't unsay them. You can't undo what you did to me in front of all those people. You can't make me forget how it felt to have my only child, the person I loved more than life itself, look at me with such contempt. So what, you're just going to cut me out? Never speak to me again? Her voice was breaking. No, Emily. You cut me out. Last night, when you told me I didn't fit in your life, when you chose Brandon and his family and their money over your own mother, you made the cut. I'm just accepting it. But I'm your daughter. You can't just stop being my mother. Can't I? You stopped being my daughter the moment you decided I was an embarrassment. You stopped being my daughter when you plotted to steal from me. You stopped being my daughter when you stood in that mansion and told me I wasn't good enough for your new life. I picked up my purse. I'd said everything I came to say. The townhouse is off limits. The trust is irrevocable. When I die, you'll get nothing from me except the memory of what you threw away. I hope Brandon's money and his family's approval are worth it. I hope they keep you warm at night. I hope they're there for you when you're sick or scared or sad. I hope they love you the way I did. Mom, please. Can't we talk about this? She was crying openly now, reaching for me. I stepped back. There's nothing left to talk about. You made your choice. Now live with it. I walked to the door. My hand was on the knob when Emily's voice stopped me. You're really going to do this? You're going to throw away our entire relationship over a stupid house? I turned back one last time. No, sweetheart. You threw away our relationship. The house is just the excuse you used. If it hadn't been the townhouse, it would have been something else. You wanted me out of your life, and now you've got your wish. Enjoy your engagement party. Enjoy your wedding. Enjoy your perfect life with your perfect fiancé and his perfect family. Just do it without me. And I left. I walked out of that apartment, rode the elevator down, got in my car, and drove away. And this time I wasn't crying. I felt empty, hollowed out, but also strangely free. Like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't even know was there, and I'd finally set it down. The next few days were quiet. No calls from Emily. No texts. Nothing. I wondered if she was relieved, if she was telling everyone her crazy, controlling mother had finally shown her true colors. I wondered if Brandon was comforting her, validating her, convincing her she was the victim. Then, on day 4, I started getting calls from family members. My cousin Maria, who I hadn't spoken to in months. Rachel, what happened? Emily called me crying, saying you disowned her over a house? My Aunt Susan. Rachel, honey, I know you and Emily had a fight, but surely you can work it out. She's your only daughter. Even Emily's old dance teacher, Mrs. Patterson. Rachel, Emily reached out to me. She said you had a disagreement at her engagement party. Whatever happened, I'm sure you two can fix it. You were always so close. Emily was making the rounds, painting herself as the victim, making me look like the unreasonable one. And part of me wanted to call all of them back, explain what really happened, defend myself. But I didn't. Because anyone who really knew me, really understood what kind of mother I'd been, wouldn't need an explanation. They'd know there was more to the story. On day 7, Brandon's mother called. That surprised me. Mrs. Carlos, this is Patricia Ashworth. I think we need to have a conversation. I don't think we have anything to discuss, Mrs. Ashworth. Please. Just hear me out. Her voice was different from the cold dismissal I'd heard at the party. I wanted to apologize for my behavior at the engagement party. I should have intervened when Emily spoke to you that way. It was inappropriate, and I'm sorry I didn't stop it. I was speechless. I also wanted you to know that I've been having some concerns about the engagement. Brandon and Emily have been arguing constantly since your confrontation. He's been pressuring her to take legal action against you for the townhouse. She's been crying for days. And I've started to wonder if we've all been enabling something that isn't healthy. Mrs. Ashworth. I raised Brandon to be successful, Mrs. Carlos. But I'm afraid I didn't raise him to be kind. And I've watched him turn your daughter into someone I'm not sure I like very much. She talks about you terribly, but then I see her crying over old photos. She says she doesn't need you, but she's falling apart without you. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm a mother too. And if my son ever treated me the way Emily treated you, I'd be devastated. You did the right thing, setting boundaries. I just wanted you to know that not everyone in Brandon's family thinks you're the villain here. She hung up after that, leaving me sitting in stunned silence. Patricia Ashworth, of all people, had called to apologize. The world really was upside down. On day 10, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Carlos? This is Jennifer Huang. I'm a friend of Emily's from college. I was at the engagement party. My stomach tightened. Yes? I wanted to call because what happened that night has been bothering me. The way Emily spoke to you was horrible. And I know I'm a stranger to you, but I thought you should know that several of us have pulled back from Emily since then. What she did wasn't okay. I appreciate you saying that. There's something else. After you left, Brandon and Emily were laughing about it. They were actually laughing, like your humiliation was entertainment. A few of us left pretty soon after that. I haven't spoken to Emily since, and I don't plan to. I wanted you to know that you weren't wrong to walk away. After she hung up, I cried. Not from sadness this time, but from relief. Relief that I wasn't crazy, that my pain was valid, that other people had seen Emily's cruelty for what it was. 2 weeks after our confrontation, Emily showed up at my apartment. I saw her through the peephole, standing in the hallway looking small and uncertain. Nothing like the confident, cruel woman from the party. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. Mom. Her voice was rough, like she'd been crying. Can we talk? I don't think there's anything left to say, Emily. Please. Just 5 minutes. She looked terrible, dark circles under her eyes, her hair unwashed, her expensive clothes wrinkled. Against my better judgment, I let her in. She sat on my couch, the same couch where she'd sat as a little girl eating cereal and watching cartoons. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'm sorry, she said. For everything. For the party, for what I said, for how I treated you. I've been awful. Yes. You have been. She flinched at my bluntness. Brandon and I have been fighting. Constantly. He's angry about the townhouse, about the trust. He keeps saying you're manipulating me, that I need to take legal action. But Mom, I don't want to take legal action. I don't want to fight with you. Then don't. He says if I don't, it means I'm choosing you over him. He says I have to decide. I looked at my daughter, and I saw what I'd been too blind to see before. She was exhausted. Worn down. She'd lost weight. The spark I'd always loved in her eyes was gone. Emily, let me ask you something. When you're with Brandon, are you happy? Really happy? She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was small. I don't know anymore. Do you feel like yourself? Like the person you want to be? I don't know who I am anymore, Mom. I've spent 2 years trying to be who Brandon wants, who his family expects. I've changed everything about myself. The way I dress, the way I talk, the people I spend time with. And now I've hurt you, I've lost friends, and I'm still not good enough for him. He still finds things to criticize, still pushes me to be more, do more, have more. Then why are you marrying him? Because I thought this was what I wanted. Success, money, status. A life that was nothing like the one I grew up in. No more struggling, no more worrying, no more being poor. We were never poor, Emily. We didn't have much, but we had enough. And we had love. We had each other. I know. She started crying. God, Mom, I know. And I threw it all away because I was ashamed. Ashamed of being the scholarship kid, ashamed of having a mom who cleaned houses, ashamed of not being born into money like Brandon was. He made me feel like my past was something dirty, something to hide. And I believed him. Emily. At the party, when I told you to leave, I saw the look on your face. And I knew, even then, that I was destroying something irreplaceable. but Brandon was so proud of me afterward. His parents were so approving. And I thought that meant I'd finally made it, finally proved I belonged. But Mom, I've been miserable ever since. Because the cost of belonging in their world was losing you. And no amount of money or status is worth that. I wanted to reach for her, to hold her like I had when she was little and scared and needed her mother. But I couldn't. Not yet. Because I needed to know this was real, not just manipulation, not just another scheme to get what she wanted. Emily, what do you want from me right now? I want my mom back. I want to be able to call you when I'm sad. I want to be able to visit without feeling like I'm being judged for every choice I make. I want to feel like I have a family again, because Brandon's family isn't family. They're just people who tolerate me as long as I'm useful. What about the townhouse? She looked startled, like she'd forgotten about it. I don't want the townhouse, Mom. I never really did. Brandon wanted it. He pushed, and I went along with it because that's what I do now. I go along with what Brandon wants. And the wedding? She looked down at her hands, at the enormous engagement ring that suddenly looked more like a shackle than a symbol of love. I don't know. I don't know if I can marry him. Not after everything. Not when I'm realizing that he brought out the worst in me, made me into someone I hate. We sat in silence for a long moment. Outside, life went on, cars passing, people walking, the world spinning like none of this mattered. But in my small apartment, everything hung in the balance. Emily, I forgive you, I finally said. But I need you to understand that things can't go back to the way they were. You hurt me deeply. You showed me a side of yourself that terrified me. And even though I forgive you, I can't forget. Trust has to be rebuilt, and that takes time. I understand. I'll do whatever it takes, Mom. I'll go to therapy. I'll make amends with the people I hurt. I'll figure out who I really am, separate from Brandon and his expectations. I just need you to give me a chance. One chance, Emily. That's all you get. If you hurt me like that again, if you ever speak to me that way again, I'm done. For good. Do you understand? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. Thank you, Mom. Thank you for not giving up on me completely. That was 6 months ago. Emily broke off her engagement 2 weeks after that conversation. Brandon was furious, threatened to sue her for the ring, for emotional distress, for anything he could think of. But in the end, he just moved on to the next beautiful, ambitious woman he could mold and control. Emily's been in therapy ever since. Working through her insecurities, her need for external validation, her complicated feelings about growing up with less money than her peers. She apologized to the friends she pushed away, and accepted that some relationships can't be repaired. She's learning to be comfortable with who she really is, not who she thought she needed to be. We meet for lunch once a week. Sometimes it's easy, comfortable, like old times. Sometimes it's hard, stilted, awkward. She still says things that hurt sometimes, still has moments where her old entitled attitude surfaces. But she catches herself now, apologizes, and does better. The townhouse is still in the trust. It will still go to charity when I die. Emily accepts this. She says she understands, that she deserves it, that she wants me to have security and peace of mind. I believe her. Mostly. I don't know if we'll ever have the relationship we had when she was younger. Too much has happened, too many cruel words spoken, too much trust broken. But we're building something new. Something more honest, maybe. Something where I don't have to pretend her behavior is okay, and she doesn't have to pretend she's someone she's not. I learned something through all of this. I learned that love without boundaries isn't really love, it's enabling. I learned that being a good mother doesn't mean accepting abuse or disrespect. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your child is to let them face the consequences of their actions. But most importantly, I learned that I matter too. That my feelings matter, that my boundaries matter, that my dignity matters. For 40 years, I'd put Emily first in everything. And in doing so, I'd taught her that my needs didn't count, that she could treat me however she wanted and I'd always be there, always forgive, always accept. Setting boundaries, walking away, protecting myself, those weren't acts of cruelty. They were acts of self-preservation. They were acts of self-respect. And they were the wake-up call Emily needed to realize what she was becoming. Would I have given her the keys if she'd asked differently? If she'd apologized first, shown remorse, treated me with basic respect? I don't know. Maybe. But she didn't ask differently. She demanded. She expected. She felt entitled. And that entitlement needed to be challenged. So yes, I froze her world with my words. I took away the future she'd been counting on, the security she'd been planning to steal from me. And I'd do it again. Because sometimes love means saying no. Sometimes love means letting your child fall so they can learn to stand on their own. Sometimes love means protecting yourself so you don't lose yourself completely. I'm 65 years old. I've spent most of my life serving others, sacrificing for others, putting others first. And I'm done. For the first time in decades, I'm putting myself first. I'm protecting my peace. I'm maintaining my boundaries. I'm living for me. And if that makes me selfish in some people's eyes, so be it. I've earned the right to be a little selfish. I've earned the right to say no. I've earned the right to expect basic respect and dignity from my own child. So I ask you, wherever you're watching from, whatever your own story is, would you have given her the keys? Would you have let your child walk all over you, take what's yours, treat you like garbage? Or would you have done what I did, stood your ground, protected yourself, demanded better? Tell me in the comments. Because I need to know I'm not alone in this. I need to know that other people understand that loving your child doesn't mean letting them destroy you. I need to know that someone out there gets it, gets the pain of loving someone who hurts you, gets the courage it takes to walk away from your own child when they become someone you don't recognize. My name is Rachel Carlos. I am 65 years old. And I did the hardest thing a mother can do, I said no to my daughter. I set boundaries. I protected myself. And I'd do it again. Every single time.